Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So I have been asked for quite a while now by some of my viewers to take a look at the YouTube channel Just Pearly Things, who has been described to me by various people as the female Andrew Tate and the ultimate pick-me girl. So obviously I was intrigued. Her channel somehow has 1.47 million subscribers and features some of the most ridiculous video titles, including "Don't take dating advice from women," "Pearl destroyed entire panel with one question," "The delusion of modern women," and "Entitlement mindset of modern women." You know, just a lot of internalized misogyny, self-hatred, and insecurity that's projected onto others. And of course, after doing a little bit of digging, and by that I mean I just looked at her most popular videos on her channel, it turns out that Pearl has also debated alongside Andrew Tate, so we know she lacks any integrity or self-respect or an ounce of compassion for other human beings. Making this video has been my first introduction to Pearl, so I want to invite you to come along with me on this journey of discovery, and if you would like me to dive even deeper into this topic and discover more and have a look at more of her content, then please just leave a comment below and let me know. And of course, if it's your first time here, it would be wonderful if you subscribed. Hi, welcome, my name is Rachel. I review books, I talk about poetry, I do lots of social commentary, and I respond and react to lots and lots of stuff. I do a lot of feminist content, a lot of pro-LGBT plus content, and I'm all for equality and helping people out and just supporting people who need it and calling out anti-feminists and misogynists wherever I can. So thank you for coming along on this journey with me. Generally, when I make videos like this, I try and have a rule of, you know, critique the content and not the person. But in this case, it's very hard because Pearl herself in her content comes across as quite unlikable. She acts like she's bored constantly. She acts like she doesn't want to be on camera, like she doesn't want to be there. She has no passion or excitement for her work. And as I think I'll say later in the video, like, if you don't seem like you care about your work, why should I? All of her videos are just her like monotone and miserable looking, and I'm like, why are you even doing this if you don't enjoy it, you know?
In general, I don't think that like men should really take relationship advice from women. Talk
Your
about
job?
intersexual dynamics.
Is that not your job though?
No, I don't give advice, not to men on dating. I've said multiple times. It's like a misconception.
Interesting.
I'm going to give you guys the best solution that will fix society and all of its problems. The tenets of my channel is really more of a curiosity for truth and really making observations about society and the world. I want to find this thing they photoshopped on me. Maybe you guys and then they'll also pull like kind of the most unflattering angles of me. It's like a bit rude. I can't find it. They photoshopped me.
So it's hard to separate that. And also I think when you have the kinds of views that Pearl does, which are very like, honestly, I'm just gonna say they're very hateful, it's hard to not critique her as a person for having those views. And also it's hard to find any redeeming features of her content.
Stop having sex with whales. guys. This is the problem. Why does Lizzo think she's a 10? Genuinely, why does Lizzo think she's a 10? She wouldn't think she was a 10 if there wasn't. Oh no, I dropped my phone. Hold on. Oh yeah, I don't think women should vote. Wait. So there's like a pattern. So this is like guys, when they've dated enough women, they start to see like patterns in our behavior. And like one thing that they found was like women tend to like find God around the age of 28. So they kind of like start to rebrand. So basically it's kind of like a red flag when you say around 28, I like found God or found the spiritual journey, because it's kind of like, okay, I spent the first half of my 20s being a hoe, and then now it's like I'm not saying a hoe, okay, but like okay, a hoe. What is a hoe statistically? More than 5 partners. But I'm just telling you how like men see
That's
it. It's
and
kind of like
that's not the men for
no,
me.
okay,
Do you know what I mean?
listen,
Do you know what I mean?
listen. But this isn't the men for me. I'm telling you, this is how like men see it.
Women, we are the worst we have ever been in all of human history. Women need to improve. I'm sorry, ladies. Pick your bed and lie in it. You cannot pick a man to have a child with, make that decision, and then later say that you're not going to work it out in the name of your happiness. Our happiness doesn't matter.
Do you think that women should be prosecuted if they have an abortion?
Yeah, I think if I think that the information should be out there, but if I think if they outlawed abortion moving forward, they should, because
like a full life sentence in jail.
yeah, if they, because to me it's you either believe it's a life or you believe it's not a life, and if you believe it's a life, if we like under the law, if we recognized I don't want to say fetus, but like the baby as like a life, I just think it would only make sense to prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law.
Usually with content you can be like, oh, okay, well, they're wrong about this, this, and this, but hey, at least they get this right, or at least they're trying to do this good thing, or whatever. But with Pearl, I've yet to find anything really redeeming. So in some ways I feel like I might be coming across too harsh in this video, but in other ways I'm like, but what is there that's redeeming? Because I haven't found anything so far. There might be stuff out there, but I haven't seen it. So who is Just Pearly Things? Well, according to an Insider article I read, Hannah Pearl Davis, known as Pearl Online or Just Pearly Things, is a 26-year-old woman who hosts the podcast The Pre-Game. She claims she doesn't hate women, but honestly, with the kind of content she puts out, that's about as valid as me sitting here saying, you know what? I do hate dogs. You got this. I love you. Whose? Was it yours? Thank you. Pearl also claims that through her content she's simply advocating for men, which would be admirable if her advocation for men wasn't at the expense of women. She advocates for men by constantly putting women down, being horrifically mean for no reason, calling women hoes and bitches. If you have to lift one group up at the detriment to another, you're doing it wrong. According to this article, she grew up in a big family with 9 siblings and her parents were clearly rich. Pearl comes from a very privileged background. Her earliest YouTube content featured things like her dad buying, and I quote, a massive water slide for their backyard and interviewing her millionaire dad.
Here's what people don't understand about the 1%. So my dad, 1% earner. My mom, 1% earner. They both worked at a software company for 25 years, sold it after 25 years. And here's what people don't understand about that 1%. They do not care about designer. They don't care about flexing. They don't care about saying, I live a better life than you. I live a life that you guys dream up. Like,
I'm doing a messy house tour because I don't feel like cleaning before this. The house is huge. But yeah, this is one side of the house. And then I walk over there to that side of the house. I'm gonna take you guys with. Next we got like this side of the house, and this is like where I parked my car over there. This is like the great room, so I'll play piano over there. It's kind of cool because it's got like crazy high ceilings. Dog, okay.
I think this puts a lot of things into context because, you know, it's easy to sit there in your 10-bedroom family mansion and talk about how it's women's fault if they get abused or mocking feminists for standing up against inequality and prejudice. But her coming from such a sheltered background clearly explains a lot of her views, but it doesn't excuse them and it doesn't make her views right. Just because she maybe hasn't personally seen inequality in the world, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe if Pearl had ever had to actually work for anything she's got in her life or grown up disadvantaged like the rest of us, then maybe she might have a little bit more understanding of how the real world works. But as I always say, while her privilege maybe explains her ignorance, it doesn't excuse it. Plenty of other people have grown up as or more privileged and well off than Pearl, and they still understand the need for feminism and that there are inequalities in the world that disadvantage people and it's not their fault. It seems to me Pearl is just willfully ignorant, whether this is because she's too lazy to actually do the research and figure out things for herself, or because she's realised that she can profit off her stupidity and callousness, or maybe a bit of both, I don't know. But either way, it's willful ignorance, and I'm just not on board with that. I've quoted this in a video before, but I think it's partially still relevant here. But Mikki Kendall writes in her book Hood Feminism, which is fantastic, and I thoroughly recommend it to everyone. There's nothing feminist about having so many resources at your fingertips and choosing to be ignorant. Nothing empowering or enlightening in deciding that intent trumps impact, especially when the consequences aren't going to be experienced by you, but will instead be experienced by someone from a marginalized community. Privilege not only blinds you to oppression, it blinds you to your own ignorance, even when you notice the oppression. I think this is something Pearl needs to maybe take on board. She could learn a lot from people like Kendall. Honestly, my first impression that I get of Pearl is that, honestly, she frustrates me because all of her content is so lazy and low effort on her part, and yet she's still being rewarded for it by misogynists, you know. But other than that, I feel really, really sorry for her.
If you marry a high-value man, would you give him permission to have sex with other women if he's emotionally invested in you? Permission? I wouldn't give him permission, but I think if you get a high-value man, if you choose to marry, if I chose to go down the path of high-value man, then that would also be signing up for high-value problems. So if I chose to go down that path, I would know that it's a possibility, and I don't think I would want to ruin an entire family over that. So would I give him permission? No. But if it happened, am I going to break up my whole home? Probably not. But I will say my views have changed on that, because that's a very hard pill to swallow. But the one thing you have to know as a girl, it's like, if you choose that guy, then just know that might come with it.
Like, yeah, she probably gets a fair bit of money from all this attention and all the crap content that she just pours out into the world, because she just pumps it out, right? And sure, she's getting a lot of attention from other misogynists, but let's be honest, none of those men watching her actually respect her, because ultimately, she's a woman, and they don't respect women. So as much as it might seem like they do, and they might be giving her money for now, that's not going to last. Is the money she's making from this now really going to satisfy her in the long run, when her life must be miserable from just sitting around hating so many people and being angry and miserable all the time? All the self-hatred she clearly displays towards herself and other women in her videos, is that really going to make her happy and fulfilled in the long term? Can she really live with herself knowing that she's making a living by putting down other women, putting real women in danger, enabling and giving a platform to dangerous, violent criminals like Andrew Tate, and generally just putting so much harmful content into the world? And the thing is, when you have this fan base full of misogynists who hate you for simply existing as who you are, but they're willing to tolerate you for now because you're sticking to their rules, that can all change in an instant. All she has to do is put one foot wrong and that entire fan base is going to turn on her. She's not built herself a solid foundation. It's easy for someone like Pearl to be spewing these hateful, harmful views while she's sat in her place of privilege now, but that place might not last forever. We're seeing this happening so often with other content creators now. In the last couple of months, I can name like a handful off the top of my head. No matter how careful and sensible and, you know, how in control of your life you think you are, bad things can still happen. You can still end up in a place of disadvantage or struggle or with something going wrong. And if you've made your career of putting down other people who are going through those struggles and you end up going through them yourself, that's not going to turn out well for you. People are going to call you a hypocrite, people are going to be angrier than you, people are going to turn on you. The people who you've been putting down are going to be angry, and the people who have been on your side are now going to turn against you, and who and what do you have left? Pearl is known for mocking and putting down any woman who is less than perfect at every opportunity. So what happens when she herself is less than perfect? Pearl constantly body shames women for being overweight or not having her ideal body. So what happens if she herself ends up putting on weight because of a change in lifestyle, a health condition? Just generally that's what happens to a lot of people when you age. We're seeing this happen right now with the Young Dumb Honey Bun, or the unpopular opinion with Sarah. She built her career off fat shaming Amberlynn Reid and others and judging people for being overweight while she was like, I'm the pinnacle of perfection, look at my brilliant body. And yet now she's getting to an age where she is overweight herself. I had no idea where her content started because I only saw her where she is today, and like, no shade to her, but she's clearly an overweight woman who now is trying to like backtrack on everything she said by like hiding her body and photoshopping her body and all this stuff. But the people who were her fans are now realizing what a hypocrite she was and how awful she is, and she's getting so much backlash, and she doesn't have the respect of her audience or anyone else anymore. And this could very easily happen to Pearl as well. But that's not the only example. Like, not at all saying body shaming is fine at all. I'm just pointing out that that's what's happening now. Another example is with Steven Crowder. Both Pearl and Crowder have made their career off talking about how you need traditional heterosexual marriage. You need a man and a woman raising 1 million babies. You need to do this and this and this and this. Fine for Pearl now as she's a single woman and she doesn't have like any kind of history or background. But look what's happening to Crowder now. Everyone's calling him out, even the people who used to be his fans, because now he's divorced and he's not doing anything for his kids. And while he can go on about how kids need a mum and a dad and blah blah blah, he hasn't been a dad to his kids, not a good one. He's abused his ex-wife, all this stuff. People are calling him out for it. Same with Bethany Beal. She started off building her career off shaming women for being sexual beings, much in the same way that Pearl does now. Except now that Bethany's realised that, hang on, purity culture is actually kind of harmful. It's harmed me and it's harming others. I actually quite like sex. She's having to backtrack and people are calling her out for it. And that could potentially happen to Pearl too. What if Pearl ends up divorced, a single mother? What if she ends up having a one-night stand? What if she's the one who ends up with a body that isn't ideal to her? What if she's the one who ends up sexually assaulted or abused or in a domestic violence situation? These things can happen no matter how careful you are, no matter how much you don't want it to. But when she spent her life and built her career up shaming other women for going through this stuff, what happens when she goes through it and she needs help as well? This is why I feel so sorry for her. But at the same time, it's hard to have that pity when she's so hateful to others and she's putting so much dangerous content out into the world and she's hurting so many other people. But I know, I'm just talking about saying this hateful stuff she's done. Let's look at a few examples. I figured for this video, as an introduction to her content, we would take a look at a couple of different videos that she's recently put out. So these are all videos that have gone out in the last like week or 2 weeks or so. So this is where she's at now with her content now. If there are other videos of hers that you'd like me to react to and respond to and talk about, then please let me know which ones down in the comments and I'll try and get to them in a future video. But for now, I figured just doing a kind of like, where is she at this moment in time would be interesting to look at. So the first video we're going to look at is called Married People Ruined Marriage for Us, which is interesting coming from a single woman, but here we are. In this video, we have to listen to Pearl attempt to talk to the camera for 13 minutes. There's a lot of rambling in this, despite it already being such a short video, and throughout it all, she really doesn't say a lot. I think she would benefit from actually planning her videos out and maybe scripting a little bit before she even turns on the camera. And then after she's filmed, she would really benefit from editing. There are like whole 30-40 second clips in this where it's just her scrolling through a phone. Nope, can't find what I was looking for, never mind. Stop it. Prepare before you film, edit afterwards. It's not that hard. Just put a little bit of effort in, alright? Laziness, that's what it is. There's no other word for it. And again, normally I try not to be so personal, but this really annoys me because this is my job as well. I know the effort it takes to do those things and it's worth it, you know? It frustrates the hell out of me when I see people being lazy. Anyway, in this video, our single woman Pearl is telling us about her latest Twitter argument, which seems to be a thing she does a lot. She just spends a lot of her time arguing with people on Twitter for the sake of it. Again, doesn't seem like a very fun life, but if it makes her happy, then okay, I guess. This particular argument started with her apparently going on a rant on Twitter about how traditional relationships work better than 50-50 partnerships.
Today, I'm going to be speaking about Twitter, as usual, right? I know a lot of people are saying, why go back and forth with people on Twitter? Recently, it's been taking up a lot of my free time. It's become, some would say, a hobby. There's this lady named, and I think I've tweeted back and forth with her before about something. I can't remember, but I was talking about how traditional relationships work better than this like 50-50 partnership. Now, that's not to say that women can just not work, which I've gone over before. Historically, women worked, we just worked in the house. All right?
Yeah, so I've gone over a lot of this stuff before in other videos and completely debunked it. I think it was in videos where I spoke about like Classic Like Abby and maybe some Paul and Morgan ones as well, but this is absolutely not true. And also, can we just appreciate the irony of her saying this while she's currently working and making money for herself? Anyway, it's a complete myth that, oh, women never worked, women just stayed home. No, working class women have always had to work. They didn't have the privilege of staying home and choosing not to work. Claiming women just worked in the house is such a privileged upper and middle class way to think. It's such a privileged thing to say. I've spoken before about my own family's history, and my mum was good enough to send me over a few photos for this video. The women in my family worked as much as the men. They looked after the kids together alongside the men. They looked after the houses alongside the men. They did the same work that men did, and I'm sorry my tummy's rumbling because I'm quite hungry. I don't know if the mic's picking that up. But the women in my families, just like the men, were farmers, were miners, were nail makers. They worked in cloth halls, they worked in retail, they worked as dinner ladies, they did all sorts of stuff. There's these amazing old photos of this husband and wife who are like, oh god, I don't even know, like great grandparents or something. And they owned a nail makers together, which sounds a bit ridiculous, but it was a real legitimate job, and they had this business together. And there's these amazing photos of the couple, and they're both there doing the hard work, creating the nails, hammering away, making these physical things, doing the physical work. I have ancestors who, as young as 5, 6, 7 years old, they were girls who were sent to work down the mines because they were small, they were little, that's what they could do. They were doing the hard physical labour. I've spoken before, I had an ancestor who, she died 7 years old in the Husker Pit disaster, which is where one of the mines in, I think, Silkstone in South Yorkshire, there was a flash flood and the mine flooded and she died in there at like 7 years old, maybe 9 years old, I can't remember, but it was young. She was a little girl. She died doing physical labour for her family. Women in working class families have always worked. I myself got my first job at 14. I put myself through a sixth one working 2 jobs. This is what working class women have always had to do.
Guys, if you wanted to see, I'm telling you, I grew up with some of these Amish people. I mean, not grew up, but like we got furniture from them, so I kind of saw how they lived. If you guys think that like working in the house back then was just like this soft life, you are sadly mistaken. Oh my gosh. I want to do a video where I go to the Amish and like live like them for a week. I think it'd be really interesting.
This little bit annoyed me just on a personal level because, like, you have to tell me she's joking. This privileged child could not survive having to look after herself and care for herself and do real hard work for a week. Not a chance. It just wouldn't happen. This has to be a joke. Anyway, Pearl then complains because some random woman on Twitter dared to say that she knew more about her own marriage than Pearl because she'd been married for 15 years, again, as opposed to Pearl, who's 26 and single.
She basically saying, I've been married 15 years, therefore I am the authority on marriage over me. And I think on the surface that makes sense, right? I mean, come on. She's got more experience than me. If she wasn't arguing with me over basic things.
Now, I'm not saying that if you want to talk about relationships online, you need to be, 40 years married and you need to have this, and this in your life. Not true at all. I think single people can talk about relationships as well, and they can share their own personal experiences and stuff like that. But I think there's a difference between someone talking about, hey, this is what I found worked for me, and this is what you all need to do because this is the only right way to do things, which is what Pearl does. I also think there's a big difference in the experiences of people. Like, Pearl has publicly been in one relationship, and it seemed like that may have been a bit of a publicity stunt from what I saw. I don't know, I can't speculate, I wasn't in that relationship myself. But then at her age, I'd been like living with a man for 4 years in this like very serious long-term relationship. So even at a young age, you can both have very different experiences and be able to talk about relationships in different ways, But I think when you are talking about like things you found that work for you, I do trust this woman who has been married for 15 years over Pearl because she's gonna know herself, isn't she? It seems very odd to me that someone as young as Pearl is here saying, nope, all relationships have to be this one way and they can't work any other way, and I know because reasons. And then you have a woman coming in saying, actually, for the last 15 plus years, I've been doing it this way that you say isn't working, and it's really, really working well for me, and this is why. Why wouldn't you listen to that person? I don't know. Anyway, Pearl goes on to try and be condescending to this woman, and I'm just like, stop it. Just listen to her.
And what we've seen is that 50-50 partnerships don't work. And I think it's very clear in the data and the results.
This is insane to me. Like, how can she make these claims like this with absolutely nothing to back it up when she's wrong? Relationships like this do work for a lot of people. How is it so difficult for her to acknowledge that different kinds of relationships work for different people? How is she so narrow-minded that she can't understand that people different to her exist? If she wants a traditional relationship with traditional gender roles, there's nothing wrong with that. Her saying, hey, this is the kind of relationship that would work for me, this is what I want, there's nothing wrong with that. But her sitting there and saying, nope, you're all doing relationships wrong. I, a single woman, know this. It's ridiculous. Is she delusional? Or does she just think that much of herself that she can sit there and tell people that, you know, however their relationships have been working for them for the last year, 5 years, 15 years, whatever, it's wrong and she knows better? Is it delusion or is it ego?
What the liberals will say is, oh, the women have always been miserable, they always wanted to leave, but they couldn't under patriarchy. And I think anyone with half a brain / IQ can see that is just not the truth. So,
yeah, because that was often the case. People have literally spoken out about this for years, but no, go on, Pearl. Why don't you just rewrite actual lived experiences of thousands of women just to fit your narrative?
What do I talk about in marriage? I say women submit to your husbands. Women don't get fat. Women have sex with your husbands. Is this crazy marriage advice? Is this off the chain? You need a PhD in marriage? I mean, call me crazy. I don't know. Call me crazy.
Yes, that is crazy advice and offensive advice and not useful advice. How about instead, women, be in a relationship with a person that makes you both happy while you both have mutual respect for each other. Or women, be happy, comfortable and healthy in your bodies. Women, be in a relationship where you both communicate about sex and have it as much or as little as suits you both. That's the reasonable response, not any of this crap that Pearl is saying. Why is that so difficult for her to accept?
But I got to thinking, why is this so controversial? Why are married women arguing with me?
How about because you're an idiot who's talking out of your bottom? What you're actually arguing for here is for bodily autonomy to be taken away from women. You're pushing for some women, obviously not all, but for some women to have to stay in potentially abusive relationship with little control over their own lives. I think that's pretty obvious. They're arguing with you because you're not listening to other people when they try and tell you about their own experiences. You're speaking over marginalized voices. You're speaking over real women. You're ignoring the actual abuse that real women have had to go through just so you can make a quick cash grab as a pick-me girl and an abuser's dream.
And I realized we have a whole generation of people that have never seen happy traditional relationships, and we're all just trying to figure it out. But my generation has seen you guys' generation, right? The 20-year-olds have seen the 30 and 40-year-olds and said, whatever the hell they're doing, we don't want to do that because this is horrible. I mean, the married people we do know as a group get divorced, or they're all miserable, they hate each other, they're arguing. Like, how many happy 35 plus couples do you know? In our generation, it's not many. And so we see what you guys did. And we also see the married people. We see the married people where the wife is just running the relationship. And we say, that doesn't look like it works. We don't really want to do that. And the old people, the oldies, will come to us and say, well, you're not married. You're you're personal attack. And we're like, look, you guys have fun over there, do that. But our generation, we've seen what you guys have been up to, and we're not with this. Well, I don't want to say a lot of my generation still is, but the enlightened thinkers.
This is just a very rambly clip. I'm not even sure what she's trying to say here exactly. She just lacks the ability to articulate herself properly, and I find it very frustrating to watch. And this is just anecdotal, these are just my experiences, but I've seen lots of traditional couples where people are still married after however many years in these traditional gender roles, and the husband is controlling and abusive and nasty, and the women are too afraid to leave because abuse is just something you put up with, you know? Divorce is just, you know, not something you do, is it? And personally, I've been in a relationship with a man who was physically and emotionally abusive, and I am very thankful that because of feminism, because of the way society has changed, because of the freedoms that are now allowed to women, because of how the laws have changed to support us, I was able to leave that abusive relationship safely. I was able to move on with my life without facing any stigma or backlash or have people shame me for leaving an abuser, you know? But I've also seen people in happy, loving, long-term relationships who've had non-traditional relationship structures, you know? Different dynamics, different living arrangements, different things that work for them. I've seen all sorts of happy couples. I've also seen people who happily and amicably divorced and have gone on to keep living brilliant lives and even started new relationships where they were happy again. I've seen it all, so what is your point, Pearl? Then there's a lot more rambling from her. Not all of it makes sense. I feel a bit bad, like, calling her out for being so, like, poorly spoken and just having this really lazy content, because, like, it's conflicting, because even though she's a channel that's so much bigger than me, and that's kind of punching up, I do also kind of feel like I'm punching down here, because I feel a bit like, you know, calling out Pearl for the kind of content she puts out feels like I'm shouting at an illiterate child for not being able to read a Peter and Jane book, you know? Like, is it really her fault she's stupid? Hard to say.
So, that's why I say, and this is what I tweeted this, I said, a lot of you offer marriage advice when you obviously wear the pants in your relationships with your husbands. No good. I'm good, lady. I don't care how long you've been married if we got to argue about submission. Like, it shouldn't be that crazy. This shouldn't be insane advice.
This is not the mic drop moment she thinks it is. Also, I wonder if she realizes that if she herself really wants this traditional marriage with gender roles and submission, then she shouldn't be out here flaunting herself all over the internet, should she? Because as soon as she gets married, she's going to have to give up this channel if she wants a traditional relationship, right? She's going to have to give up a job. All this money she's earning now, she's going to have to hand over to her husband, because he's the one who should be dealing with the finances, right? Not her. Her only role should be to be barefoot and pregnant at home in the kitchen. She can't have any of this public persona. She can't have a job. She can't have her own bank account. She can't have any of this stuff, can she? Does she not realize the benefits feminism has allowed her to have, or enabled her to have, you know?
And my question to the liberals, what evidence do you have that this 50-50 partnership type bullshit works? I need some evidence. Because the conservatives will say, hey, we can point to the marriage rates then and the marriage rates now. And the liberals won't like that. But their counter evidence is no evidence.
Well, we could look at the drastic drop in female suicide rates when no-fault divorce laws were introduced. We could look at how people are generally reporting higher rates of happiness year on year, especially among single women and women with no children. We could look at anecdotal stories about how people who choose their own relationships and the structure of it are themselves the happiest, but no, you want to just ignore all of that, I guess? Then she just goes on this completely unhinged rant about how people don't like her hair and her clothes. Like, yeah, okay, don't insult her physical appearance, but what does this have to do with anything else in the video? It's very odd. And this is the bit that also just involves seconds long clips of her just scrolling through her phone, not doing anything, and then realizing she can't find whatever she's supposed to be looking for. Again, seriously, stop it. You're lazy. Edit your videos. Sort your life out. Frustrates me a lot.
Next, all right. You guys are so crazy. They really don't like my style. Dang. So this guy, I met this dude and he took a pic with me. All right, and this is the picture we took together. Dang, for the love of God, get Pearl a stylist. How y'all got her looking like this homely at a convention? And now they're photoshopping different hairstylists on me. Is it that bad, guys? You know what's funny? Everyone comes at me. I am much better than I was a year ago. I'll tell you that. But let me know. Maybe I want to find this thing they photoshopped on me. Maybe you guys... And then they'll also pull, like, kind of the most unflattering angles of me. It's, like, a bit rude. I can't find it. They photoshopped me.
Then she shames some random stranger for not looking like a real man because his partner said they were happy together. It's rude. She just feels like another young dumb honey bun clone who is just constantly online and spends her life getting mad at people she sees online instead of actually going out and living her life and being in the real world and getting to know different people from different backgrounds who have different experiences and just, you know, having a life.
Okay. Oh, no. Oh, this girl just responded to me. Let me see. My husband is 100% my equal. This is a man that cannot be tamed. I would do anything to support him, and he would do anything to support me. He is secure enough in his masculinity to not need a weak partner to feel like a man. Does this look like a... Sorry, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, because then they're going to clip it and say, see, Pearl goes after family. Okay, I'm not trying to do that. But we'll look at the pictures and we'll be like, well, this doesn't really look like a masculine man that you're speaking about. You know, I
do pity her, but the rest of this video is even more boring, so let's move on to the next one. The next video is Pearl reacts, in all capital letters. Justin Waller School's strong independent women, question mark, exclamation mark, at whatever. So in this video, Pearl is just responding to another one of those douchey podcast videos. I've got a rant about them coming up, don't worry, where a bunch of men just sit and talk over women. This is the most pathetic video on her channel because it's like, what, 10 minutes long or something? And Pearl is on screen for about like 2 minutes of that, and half of it is just her sat in silence going, who is watching this content? What is she adding to this? Nothing. She's lazy. But in this podcast clip that she's looking at, you can't call this a response, can you? You can't even call it a reaction. She's just looking at the clip. In this clip, a woman is speaking out about her mum's accomplishments and saying how much she managed to achieve in life despite being, you know, like single and having a lot of disadvantages and all that sort of stuff, and she's doing everything alone. And all this guy can respond with is, instead of acknowledging those amazing achievements and how great this woman was, all he can respond with is, yeah, but would she have been better off with a man? It's not the got you moment he thinks it is.
Today, I am going to be reacting to a clip from the Whatever podcast.
My mother, starting from nothing to something. She from below minimum wage to above minimum wage.
Okay.
And by herself, she did that all by herself. So
would she have been better off if she had a guy?
Yes, of course. But, you know, in those time periods when she needed the guy the most, she realized
so she needed a
that
guy.
She needed a guy.
But you don't need a guy.
Obviously, my mom was so into, you know, a relationship where it's you put a certain degree and you put a certain degree and you make a house.
What are we talking about?
Where
That's
was this even going?
Like in a marriage.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, what is she even saying? No, seriously. Okay, come on.
Pearl's reaction in response to this is just honestly dumb. This woman is far more articulate than Pearl herself. She's explained herself far better than Pearl does. She's been very clear. How does Pearl not understand? This woman's saying that her mum faced adversity and struggled and achieved a hell of a lot despite it. That's all. The thing is though, look, it's a fact that couples are financially better off than single people. That is just a well-known fact. All the studies back it up. That is fine, you can't deny that. 2 incomes, nearly half the expenses, of course you're going to be more financially well off. But that's a benefit of couples. not of having a man in your life. We also have to acknowledge his double standard here. If this was a man telling a story about how his dad, like, faced adversity and achieved all this stuff and blah, 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 do you think this guy would really be jumping in there saying, but would he have been better off with a woman? Because I don't think this guy would be saying that. But actually, yes, he would have been, because couples are more financially better off than single people. That's just the way finances work. This is actually something I feel like I've ended up speaking and ranting about a lot recently. I think I spoke about it in regards to my own partner in a recent video, and me and Alizi actually discussed it in regards to a Gilmore Girls episode in a podcast we're making together that's going to be over on her podcast channel. So this is something I've been like speaking about and thinking about quite a lot recently. Two incomes are always going to be better off, but that doesn't mean that women need a man. It means that couples are financially better off than single people. That is all there is to it. It's as simple as that. Would I be in a better financial position if my partner lived with me? Yes. But that doesn't mean feminism's stupid and women can't do anything without a man and that I'm not an independent woman. I'd also be financially better off if a female partner lived with me. So what's your point? My brother and sister are definitely financially better off than me. You know why? Because they live with their partners. My brother's financially better off because he lives with his wife. My sister's financially better off because she lives with her wife. It's a couple thing, not a you need a man thing. And can we also acknowledge that, like, amongst me and my siblings, and this is just one example, but my brother's wife earns more than him. My sister's wife earns more than her. I earn more than my partner. The women are absolutely killing it in our family. I mean, my sister does really well for herself as well. That's not the point. Like, why do we need more men? And I feel that's something that men like this just couldn't get their head around because it intimidates them too much, you know?
You know that if you had two options, life with a husband, life without a husband, you would pick a husband. So why do we live in this delusion, like I don't need a man, when we really do need men to survive? Guys, think about it.
What is Pearl even on about here? This is crazy because actually this is pretty much the exact position I'm in now. This is pretty much my choice and I'm not picking it. And I know I'm only speaking for myself here and different people are going to have different choices and that's fine. But as I've said before, I love my partner. He is wonderful. I adore everything about him. I adore the life we have together. But I also love my independence and my personal space, and so does he. I love my time alone. He loves his time alone. We love our own personal space. That's one of the reasons we work so well together, because we both have the same values and want the same things in life, so we're able to build a life together that works for us. Would it make more financial sense for us to live together? Yes, we'd be saving several hundreds of pounds a month, but we don't want to, and thankfully we don't have to, because we're both able to have the finances to live separately, and because of feminism, I don't have to be owned by a man. I can choose for myself to have this life and not be reliant on a man. There's no societal pressure for me to suddenly get married and live with someone or have to stay with my parents. Thanks to feminism, I'm able to have my own bank account, my own business, work for myself, live alone, have my own flat, like live my own life, and choose not to have to live with a partner. Feminism isn't about saying, women, you have to do X, Y, and Z instead of A, B, and C. It's about saying, women, you have the freedom to choose what you want to do with your life, and you have equal access to all the opportunities that men have as well. And that's what's important. So yeah, if Pearl wants to get married and live with a man and have these traditional gender roles, then yes, she should absolutely be able to do that without shame. But equally, I should be able to live alone, remain unmarried and child-free, and still be able to choose to be with my partner and enjoy his company without shame. And everything in between for other women too.
If your car breaks down, you're going to a guy, most likely. If the power goes off, a guy has to come fix it. Like,
what crazy, delusional, unable to look after herself world is she living in? Again, I can only like share my personal experiences here, but like I don't have a car, but if I did, I know the person I'd be calling up is my sister to come help fix it. If my power goes out, I call building maintenance because it's their responsibility, and they have men and women on staff who would come and fix it. When I need furniture built or a DIY project, I do it myself. When I have a problem in the flat that maintenance, it's not their responsibility, I fix it Pearly's just admitting here that she's incapable of looking after herself, but don't project that onto all other women. That is ridiculous.
Just because we can function in society, just because men have built a society we can function in, and they allow us to survive without them, it doesn't mean that we don't need men, because we literally need men to do everything.
Yeah, no, look, I've been over this stuff so many times before in other videos, but men didn't build our society. Now, typically, society has been patriarchal, right? Power structures have kept women oppressed, which has perpetuated the cycle of men being in positions of power and then giving those positions of power to other men and so on. Girls weren't allowed a proper education for a long, long time, but boys were. Girls weren't allowed into universities, but boys were. Women weren't allowed to train in certain roles or work in certain roles, but men were. Look at my recent video on the history of gin. It's one that, like, it was a bit of a passion project and I loved doing it, but it didn't get a lot of views. But in that one, women were ruling the gin industry. They were making this gin. They were making so much money for themselves. They started being independent business owners. Working class people and women were rising up and starting to actually get quite wealthy. And you know what happened then? Marriage rates began to fall because women realized they didn't need a man to look after them. And the working class people suddenly weren't reliant on being slaves for the upper middle class people, because suddenly they had their own money and they could be independently wealthy. And the men in power didn't like that, and they had to stop it. So they changed the laws. They taxed the hell out of people making gin, and they arrested women for making gin without a license at a disproportionate rate to anyone else. It's not that the women couldn't be in these roles because of lack of skill, it's that they weren't allowed to be. And when they tried to rise up and get in positions of power, and they were capable of it, they had that taken away from them because it risked men and their power and all that. It makes me very angry. Go watch that video. That's happened so often. Women have been kept down constantly, and when they try and rise up, they've been kicked back down into their place. But some women did slip through the cracks, and without them, we wouldn't have so many advances that we do today. Without these women rising up and being amazing, we wouldn't have the internet or computers. We wouldn't have so many technical and scientific and medical discoveries and breakthroughs. Women have helped build this world as much as men. We can acknowledge that as a society, we need to work together as a whole. We need other people to function. Absolutely, there is no doubting that. We need people with different skills and experiences and knowledge and strengths, but that doesn't mean we only need men. That doesn't mean only men did everything. Look at what happened in the UK during lockdown. Most key workers, especially in the healthcare sector, were women. Women play a huge role in keeping our society running and functioning on a basic level, and we can't ignore that. We need men and women. We need people. We need to all work together. That's all there is to it. Society is built on people, not men. Ugh, back to this podcast clip, and he just sounds insecure, doesn't he?
A woman cannot look up to a man who is her equal.
But okay, you said you're in favor of 50-50. Justin, your thoughts on 50-50 dynamic?
I don't believe in 50-50 dynamic. I believe a man should take care of a woman in every way. And I think that's what he gets to do.
And of
as
course,
a man.
and
As a man. And when you come across a real man, you
Mm-hmm.
will accept that because you'd be happy to be in his frame. Because you look up to him, you want to get behind him, you want to be on that ride he's going to take you on.
Exactly. But I also have a certain point.
Yes, but but I'll tell you, a man is not going to sit there and listen to you tell him your standards.
Like, men like this can't deal with the fact that some women are smarter than them, stronger than them, more capable than them, more successful than them, so they're all like, get back in your place, and all of that crap. I hate this idea of real men and real men will take care of you. It's pathetic. It's just a way of putting down people who intimidate you, and it's so toxic. And this sort of mindset is not only harmful to women who have to be in their place, but it's harmful to men as well. To be told that if you want to do things a little bit differently, if you have a slightly different mindset, if you have different skills and strengths, and you're not a real man, of course you're a real man. Real men understand who they are and accept who they are and acknowledge their own strengths and weaknesses, no matter if they're the same or different to other people. That's what a real man is. What the hell does this even mean, that a woman cannot look up to a man who's her equal? I mean, why should I be looking up to a man in the first place? And why wouldn't I want someone to be my equal? I don't understand. My partner is my equal in so many ways, but you could also say I look up to him, I guess. I mean, I respect the hell out of him. I admire him. I think he's intelligent and creative and kind and ambitious, and he's funny and he's beautiful, and I love every part of him. But I also know he feels the same about me. When it comes down to it, we both look after each other in the ways that we need. And I know he has many strengths that I don't, but he also knows that I have many strengths that he doesn't. That's what a partnership is. Why would anyone think that wouldn't work? Why does it have to be, I'm lesser than you, and so I look up to you, we can't be equals, you be in charge? Why would anyone think it has to be like that? Sure, maybe that's what some people need and want, but that doesn't mean that for the other people who don't need and want that, it can't work for them, you know? I don't want to get behind anyone. I want to live my life alongside someone, and so does my partner. He doesn't want to be leading me around like a child. He wants someone there alongside him cheering him along, and that he can cheer on too, you know? Like I say, I bet some people probably want this life he's describing, but absolutely not everyone. And just because someone doesn't want this, it doesn't mean that they're not real men or women, you know? Saying stuff like this just shows how insecure he is in his own masculinity and identity, you know?
I do believe that a man is going to want to take charge and control the relationship.
Of course, and
oftentimes I think that women, particularly ones like you that are going to be a bit more headstrong, they're going to want to hold on to their independence until they find a man that they find is worth letting go. What's really hard for a woman nowadays is to find a man worth enough for you to be able to let go. And I think that'll be one of your biggest challenges moving forward, particularly because of how headstrong you are. You know, and that's all I really have to say about it. If you find that right guy and he comes through and he's just like you, just everything that you think you want is no offense, not true.
This guy I find really hard to listen to because I just feel like he always sounds like he has a blocked nose, which is very annoying, probably from so much cocaine. You know, these types of people just do far too much cocaine, so it wouldn't surprise me. So I find him very, very hard to listen to, but he just comes across as being very intimidated by strong women, doesn't he? Also, can we just acknowledge that we're like halfway into one of Pearl's videos on her channel and she's been on screen for like 30 seconds. How is she getting paid for literally doing nothing? And like half the time she's on screen, she just sits there looking blank. It's dull and she's lazy, and that really frustrates me.
When that man walks into your life and you're going to be able to put a lot of walls down that you wouldn't previously be able to put down.
When she finally does speak, we get crap like this.
Men don't really care. It's okay. If a guy tells you about his shoe collection, do you really care? No, we don't. We don't give a shit. That's how guys see like our careers and goals. It's cool, but like the issue is a lot of times like women come in all stressed out and wanting to like talk about all this stuff when guys just don't.
Like, is she serious? Has she ever spoken to a man in her life? If she's spending her time with guys like this, like the ones on the podcast as well, I can see why she maybe thinks like that, because these men are so devoid of personalities. They don't have anything interesting to say, so I can see why conversations would be hard for them. They're so self-centered they don't care about anyone but themselves. But that's not an all-men thing. Please stop putting down men in this way. There are plenty of men out there who do have great personalities, who you can have interesting conversations with, who will take an interest in you, who will understand that you're both human beings, you know? I think Pearl is just spending her time around the wrong people, and it makes me really sad for her. Is she really 26 and she's never met a man, whether that's a partner or a male friend, who has shown an interest in her, who has taken an interest in her? It genuinely makes me feel sorry for her. All these people on these podcasts just live in these sad, cyclical little bubbles filled with vapid, selfish people and assume the whole world is like them, and then scold the whole world for being like they are when no one else is doing that. I pity them. I really do.
But I do think that it is a cope when women say that men are intimidated by them. Like, no guy is going to be intimidated by you. Like, most guys, an average guy can beat you up. No guy is intimidated by you.
Oh my god, I think this is one of the worst things she says in any of these videos. She just goes straight for physical assault. Oh. Like, yeah, I'm a small woman. I'm sure most guys could beat me up. But seriously, is Pearl really thinking, yeah, sure, she might have more money than him, be smarter than him, be more successful than him, but he could beat her up, so he's the winner in all these situations. What the hell is wrong with her? I mean, a lot of men, or just a lot of people really, resort to violence because they're insecure, because they're intimidated by other aspects of someone's personality, because they feel powerless in other areas of their life because they feel inadequate in other ways. But violence is not a healthy response to those feelings. Acting violently when you feel insecure or worried or whatever is harmful for everyone involved. I have many thoughts about this, and it makes me very concerned for this woman, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this statement by Pearl down in the comments in particular, because I'm not quite sure how to articulate all the things I'm feeling well right now, because this bit upsets me, you know? Okay, the next video we're going to be looking at is called Don't Take Dating Advice from Women. And this is one of those clips where, like, Pearl has gone on this podcast, or maybe she's hosting the podcast, I can't tell. And it's one of those things where they all have the same format, right? And I'm so tired of seeing these. Andrew Tate did a bunch of them, Myron Gaines has done a bunch of them, Pearl does a bunch of them. And it's just like a man, or in this case a man and Pearl, sit there on one side of the table, and then they have a bunch of scantily clad women on the other side of the table, and they ask them inflammatory questions to try and make all women look bad. That's it. They pick a very certain type of young woman, and I don't say this in a way where I want to put these women down, because I don't mean this, but they're trying to portray a very specific stereotype of women in the guests that they pick. So they pick women who dress in a certain way, who have, for example, maybe a lot of makeup on, who wear quite revealing clothing, who they often pick sex workers and influencers and stuff like that, and then they get them to exaggerate these parts of them even more. Now, of course, absolutely no shame to these women from me, you know. I also like fun makeup and clothes and stuff like that, and I don't think how they dress should be any reflection of their personalities, their morals, their intelligence, anything like that. But it's very, very obvious to me that they pick these women out and get them to dress in a certain way and exaggerate that because they're trying to portray a certain stereotype and judge them for that. You know what I mean? Especially when you see the ones that Pearl has on, she very much creates a kind of us versus them divide, or me versus you. I'm not like the other girls. She will get these women to kind of exaggerate their appearance with their, you know, heavy makeup and revealing clothing, while she's sat there with no makeup, no hair done, buttoned up to her neck, you know? And again, no shame to either of these appearances. Both are absolutely fine, but it's just very clear to me she's trying to create a very specific divide between the two types of women, so she can be very much, I'm not like the other girls. I also think it's important to acknowledge that they always try and pick a very certain type of woman, or what they perceive to be a certain type of woman. So they often pick young women who haven't necessarily had an extensive education, who maybe don't have the tools they need to express themselves properly, who are still quite young and don't necessarily have a lot of experience in the real world, or they don't necessarily have the confidence they need to properly advocate for themselves properly. They definitely pick, I don't want to say vulnerable targets, but people who they perceive to be easy targets. And when these women don't live up to those stereotypes, when it turns out they are confident and intelligent and well-spoken, then they get shot down immediately. Look at the clip I showed from the Myron Gaines podcast. Look at any of these podcasts.
I am gonna agree with you. Stop interrupting me when I'm talking, man.
You don't gotta talk to me like that, though. No.
Get off the show, man. Just get out of here.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think this is, or where you're at, or whatever.
Not because you can curse at me, but I can't tell you that you're a dick.
Because I've told you a million times to stop interrupting. I can only tell you so many times.
You interrupt everybody.
I am the fucking host. It's my show. Get the fuck off the platform. Now get out of here. I don't give a fuck what you are. Get the fuck off the show.
I love you.
You're trying to create a scene, being an attention whore. It makes you look stupid.
The minute a woman stands up for herself, the minute she goes against the stereotype, the grain, and she shows she is intelligent, she is well-spoken, she gets shot down, she gets shouted at, she gets sworn at, she gets told to get the F out of my studio because she's being disrespectful. They want women to sit there, look pretty, shut up, and be degraded. That's all they invite these guests on for. And when they dare fight back, because, you know, these are real human beings with personalities and feelings and thoughts and intelligence, they don't like it. It's the same format on all of these podcasts. When's the last time you saw Pearl invite someone on who was like a woman who, I don't know, was an academic for the last 30 years and who disagreed with her on a bunch of stuff and had the research to back it up? It doesn't happen. Because one, Pearl knows she wouldn't have a leg to stand on against a woman like that. She couldn't debate a woman like that because she doesn't have the skill or knowledge herself. And chances are someone like that wouldn't waste their time going on a podcast like this either. When I made my video on Myron Gaines and his terrible book, Why Women Deserve Less, all his little fanboys came to my comment section and were like, why don't you go on his podcast and debate him? Oh, if you disagree with him, go on his podcast, debate him on his podcast. I'm like, why would I waste my time with that? My time is valuable to me. Why would I want to spend it going on some idiot's podcast so he can profit off me as he's just an angry little man shouting at me and talking over me because he's too stupid to have an actual conversation? That's why I'd never do anything like that, and that's why I think most people wouldn't go on these podcasts, because why waste your time? All these podcast hosts want are guests who they perceive to be easy targets, who they can shout at and degrade and make look bad and then be like, oh, see, all women are like this. It's predictable, it's boring, why do people still watch this stuff? Anyway, that's my rant about this kind of podcast format. Let's have a look at this clip in particular. Now, they open with the typical inflammatory question. In this case, it's about whether a guy not giving oral sex is a deal breaker in a relationship. Now, the intent here is quite clear. It's clearly meant to like be inflammatory, so then they can turn around and say, oh my god, look how shallow and selfish women are, but it's stupid. The question itself is flawed in a way that no one is pointing out. It's heteronormative. It ignores that asexual people exist. It ignores the fact that different people have different needs and wants and desires when it comes to sex in a relationship. It ignores the fact that there's no one right or wrong answer here. Truth is simply that sexual compatibility is often an important aspect of romantic relationships, both wanting the same amount of sex or not at all, both wanting to be satisfied, both wanting to provide and receive pleasure to and from the other. The only way to be happy in a relationship is to discuss these things with your partner or partners, to be clear on your personal needs and wants and boundaries, and be clear on theirs, and figure out if you're compatible. That's it. Simple. Wanting to be sexually compatible with someone doesn't make anyone shallow or selfish. It's part of being human, and that's okay. They get kind of judgy about some of these women's answers, but what they don't count on is that some of these women actually say some pretty intelligent things, like about how it's important to be satisfied and compatible and stuff like that. Take a look at these clips.
Is it the deal breaker if a guy won't go down on you?
I think so, because if they're expecting me to go down on them, I would want them to go down on me. I feel like that's important.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, it's a total deal breaker, 100%. Yeah.
I don't know if I would say it's a deal breaker, but I think it's extremely important in a relationship to feel sexually comfortable with each other, especially if it's going to be like a serious relationship.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Jamie 100% on that one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that you should always be in a relationship with somebody who cares enough about you to do things that you like. And so if you find that somebody will not do that, that's kind of a red flag.
But then Pearl has to talk over them all and come in with her all like, I'm not like the other girls because I don't care side of things.
I don't really care.
Like, I agree with that. I don't
Too like, what if you had everything else and that's the only thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I'm not gonna completely cut you off if like you check other boxes.
Again, this annoys me because she sounds like she doesn't even want to be here. Why is she in this clip at all? If she doesn't care about her own content, why should I?
All right, I'm trying to trigger this TTS. Nope. Okay, TTS is broke. Typical. Okay. Guys in the chat, don't take advice from any females on panel, especially the OF corn stars. They are a sickness to society. And why? Here, please, Centerman on the. Need to get a passport and fly to Argentina, Colombia, or South Korea.
So when there's no way to refute any of these really good points that these women are making, instead they resort to just choosing to read out insulting comments from the chat. Why is this necessary? Also, this is another typical feature of these podcasts. They specifically invite women on because they're sex workers, because they think, you know, sex workers are going to have a following, they're going to have an online presence, they're going to get people in to watch the videos, they're going to be able to share certain experiences about certain topics, and then they choose to invite sex workers on and then discredit them based on the fact that they're sex workers. It's nothing but an insecure, pathetic power play. The fact that Pearl and the host of this podcast are allowing comments like this to be read out to these guests says to me that they don't respect the guests. They want to be inflammatory, they want to be derogatory, they want to insult people. It's just horrible. If this is the kind of audience that you're cultivating and encouraging and, you know, showing off, you're a horrible person. Simple as that. Then Pearl goes on one of her little monotone rants about how men should never listen to dating advice from women, and these women, I love them, they quite rightly call her out as a hypocrite.
Like, in general, I don't think that like men should really take relationship advice from women.
You have a dating.
Interesting. I like that.
Don't
take.
you? Isn't
we
that
talk
your
about
job?
intersexual dynamics.
Is that not your job though?
No, I don't give advice, not to men on dating. I've said multiple times. It's like a misconception.
Interesting.
I like that. Okay, so where would you?
Because
suggest?
it's like how? What am I going to tell a guy how to approach a girl? When
no.
I've never approached, like, no, because I've never approached women.
But you're
Why
a
would
woman,
I?
and you know how
No,
women want to be
no, I think
Of course, she responds with a typical, well, no, actually, it's not like that. Because apparently women don't know what they want, which is ridiculous. Maybe she doesn't, but anyway.
women, like, we don't typically, like, know.
I mean,
Well,
I think
definitely
you would
not.
know.
I
But as
would
a woman, you know what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can give like tips for what you like,
Yeah.
what may work.
What
for
if,
you.
yeah, but like the thing is, like, women don't even know what we want half
I
the
know
time.
what I
like,
want.
I definitely do.
yeah.
So
I
I'm
What do you
definitely
want?
do
What do you
not.
want?
Again, maybe some projection from Pearl there. But again, I love how these women just refute her to her face and prove her wrong, and yet she refuses to acknowledge it because she's just weak. The guy then steps in and tries to look for a way to prove them wrong, and it's very clear he's just clutching at straws here. He tries to get them to talk about their experiences with approaching men, and when they're all like, oh yeah, I do it all the time, this is great, this is wonderful, this is great, he's like, yeah, but what about the times it didn't work? What about the times it went bad? Talk about that, talk about that. And he's always looking for the stories that try and make women look bad. It's ridiculous.
Wait, so you guys would hit on the guy first?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it
Yeah.
depends on the situation.
You'd hit on the guy first?
Yeah. If I was interested,
You've
yeah.
done it before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And for those of you here who have hit on the guy first, generally speaking, does it go over pretty well? Does it work?
That's
Fuck
the relationship
yeah.
that I'm
99%
in
of the
now.
time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works for you? Works for you? Like, you don't really get rejected, do you?
I have been.
When you've gone up to a guy?
Yeah.
How did you get rejected?
I mean, sometimes they'll just say, no, I'm not interested. No, I have a girlfriend. Or just, no, I'm not interested. That's okay.
Also, this clip is just so full of technical issues from the host. It's really difficult to watch. It's an absolute mess. How is this on a channel with 1.4 million subscribers? Tech problems are boring. Seriously, who watches this crap? And our final video that we're going to look is from another podcast, a different podcast. This one is titled The Truth Comes Out Eventually. And in this clip, we get the usual sexist crap coming straight from Pearl with her completely original and unique thoughts like, why should a guy wait for marriage for a girl who's given it up for free before?
From a guy's point of view, right?
Yeah.
Why would he wait for marriage or for long term with a girl that has given it up for free before?
He shouldn't.
Isn't it about time we get over this idea that sex is transactional? It's boring at this point, and it's completely untrue. A person having sex is not giving up anything. They're not selling something. They're not getting so-and-so in return. It's not a transaction. It's not something you can get for free or give for free or blah, blah. Sex is and should be a shared experience between two people. Unless it's your job, sex isn't a commodity. Then there's this other woman who comes in as a guest, and she really, really annoys me because they all together start judging some woman, and I can't work out if this woman is hypothetical or real. It's very unclear in the clip, but apparently this woman, whoever she is, has slept with 4 people, and according to this random podcast guest, this is too much, and now she needs to wait a couple of years before she ever has sex again, so it comes down to a reasonable amount.
It's not the matter of waiting.
Right.
Right? It's the matter of that 4 at 18 for me is disgusting.
I agree with you. I agree
so
with
what
you.
she needs to do,
I'm
she needs to hold it down. So if she keep that 4, so if she gets like 25 with that same 4, then she can start again.
Right.
But don't add any more to it because she's got too much already.
Right. Okay, I agree.
That's
with
what
you.
I mean.
agree
So
with you.
she can continue after she reaches 25 because 24 at 25 is all right.
This is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Real life isn't a game of The Sims where you have sliders and amounts and you have to quantify everything to keep it all within certain levels. That's silly. Who is this woman to say what is too much for someone else and what isn't? I think, especially when it comes to things like sex and relationships, people get too bogged down in the numbers and forget about the things that actually matter, which are how was the experience for you and how did it make you feel? Can you imagine if we quantified other social and physical aspects of our life in the way we do sex, or in the way that these people quantify sex? Oh, I'm sorry, but you've done 4 paintings this week, so you're gonna have to wait 5 weeks before you do another one so you can get that average down, you know? Oh, I'm sorry, you've been in this coffee shop twice this week with 2 different people. That's kind of whorish. You're actually only allowed to be in the company of 1 friend in this shop per week. Maybe we can justify it this time if you tell me exactly how many words were exchanged during the conversation with your second friend. And the first time you were in here, did you have sugar in your coffee? Let me do some calculations and see if this is acceptable or not. It would be stupid, right? To do it with anything else, so why do we do it with sex? And then some guy comes in and is all like, yeah, women always lie about their number of sexual partners.
Oh, do you know what happens is though, yeah, is this. It stays at 4 and then you'll add.
No, when Auntie Jenny's on your back.
But check it. But then she'll meet some guy and say her body counts 20 these times. She meets the guy and she'll tell the guy it's 4.
And I have to say, like, well, if people are lying about that, maybe it's because people like you are acting like it's something to be ashamed of and something to lie about. If we get rid of the stigma and the shame and make people realize that there's no guilt involved with it, in consensual sex, there's nothing to be ashamed of, then maybe people wouldn't be lying anymore. I know I've personally never lied about that sort of thing to someone, because why should I? It's not something I ever feel ashamed of. I'm happy. I've had wonderful experiences. I feel confident in my body. I've made other people feel good. What is there to be ashamed about? The only argument people really make as to why women in particular should be ashamed with their number of sexual partners is the argument of, well, if it's too high, no men will want you, which is absolute crap. Plenty of men do. I know I personally have a wonderful partner who has never once even considered I might have been with too many or too few people, because that doesn't matter to either of us. What matters is how we treat each other now, what shared values we have now, what kind of future we want to build together, you know? And it's the same for so many of my friends and their partners. This woman and Pearl then come in with her like, oh, if you lie about your number of sexual partners, the truth will always come out eventually. How? Why?
You're gonna lie because she's out there, isn't she?
She's lying right now.
She's on social media. Do you know the worst person to live with if you really tell a big lie? The worst person that you can live with is yourself.
I don't think women care about that.
Because every time she goes out there, she either got to have a really good brain to remember to lie all the time, or either that, or she would tell on herself.
All right, but check
she
it.
would either tell on herself. She would either end up lying and getting herself caught up, or she would end up telling on herself. So either which way they will find out.
I had a girl for 50 years. You think she can keep that secret for 50 years? You don't think anything will come out? You don't think you'll run into someone?
I don't think so, especially in this day and age.
You don't think her friends might say something? Because her friends are the ones that know.
Who are all these people who supposedly know all these details of your sex life? I just feel like their lives must be exhausting, you know, having to constantly think about sex and whether you're doing things right or properly or the right way, and keep a track of things and keep a track of numbers and all this stuff, and then like all this like guilt and shame revolving around what is essentially just a bodily function. Can you imagine if, again, we had to reveal other bodily functions and social interactions to other people and partners, or we'd be judged, you know? Imagine I meet someone new and I have to tell them how many times I've peed, how many different toilets I've peed in, how many times I've been sick in my life, how many times I've exercised, how many bikes I've ridden, how many roads I've ridden my bike down, how many friends I bought a drink for, how many bars I've danced in, how many friends have stayed in my spare room or sofa. It would be crazy, wouldn't it? Oh, I'm sorry, you've had 4 friends stay in that bed in the last 2 months. Too many. Nope. We're gonna have to cut down on your friend time. It's ridiculous. To me, sex is just another social and bodily function that doesn't necessarily need quantifying and making such a big deal over. As long as you're taking care of yourself, you're being safe, and you're emotionally protecting yourself as well, and it's something that's making you feel good and happy, why should there be any shame or guilt around that? Why do you need to quantify it by other people's standards? Then Pearl says one of the stupidest and most naive things I've ever heard.
You're absolutely right. Women can and do lie. My point is that the truth usually comes out eventually. Because the thing is, like, if you hoe around for too long, you can't run from yourself. You can't. You are who you are. You are your habit. So if you have the habit of sleeping around for 10, 15 years, like you're gonna go back to the streets eventually. Your friends are gonna slip up. Like the crazy stories you told your friends, someone's gonna say something.
Is she serious? Does she not realize that context is important? That people change in life? That people have different needs at different times? People act in different ways around different people. People have different needs at different times in their life. People change and grow over time, and all of that is completely normal. What a person needs and wants at one point in their life isn't going to be the same as what they need and want 10, 20 years later, maybe even not a couple months later. Things change, and that's normal and okay. Let's say at one point in your life you have regular casual sex when you're single, and you enjoy that and it's nice. That doesn't mean you'll want to continue that exact lifestyle forever. You might stop enjoying the casual sex. You might decide to make a commitment and be monogamous with someone else. You might decide you don't have time for that anymore. But this idea of if you have casual sex once in your life, you'll not be able to stop having sex with everyone you ever meet ever again is ridiculous. Again, things change. What if we said the same thing about, I don't know, my coffee order or something like that? Back when I was 18, loved hot chocolates. If I went to a coffee shop, I would get a hot chocolate. Now at 30, my drink of choice is a chai latte. Are you going to turn around and tell me, well, you had that hot chocolate once, and now you're going to order hot chocolate every time you go into a coffee shop? No, because my tastes have changed as I've got older and developed, and my needs at different times change. Sometimes I go into a coffee shop and I'm like, you know what, I don't want a hot drink. Let me get a fruit coolie thing. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? And it's the same with relationships with people and sexual needs and wants. What we want at one point isn't going to be what we need at other points in our life. And it's okay to change. Then this guy goes on about how apparently girls lie about how many people they've been with, all that crap again, and how they also lie about what the last time they had sex was and all that stuff.
When I was dating, like I was meeting girls, going out on dates. Every single girl I met said, "Oh, I've not had sex in 3 months." It's the same thing. And for me, I was like, I've heard this so many times, so I know you're lying. Do you know what I mean? But again, like, if she adds 10 more to her body count, by the time she's 25, 26, meets the one, she could tell the guy's 4. 7. You ain't gonna know.
I'm a big believer in the truth comes out eventually, and someone's gonna say something where you're like, that doesn't add up to what she said.
I think most girls have...
Or you might meet someone that you know, that it comes out that he slept. I just think eventually the truth comes out.
Again, can we talk about this like lying thing? Because while I don't condone lying, I would never encourage lying. I don't think people should lie. I think honesty is a really big part of healthy relationships. It's something I really encourage. But I think the issue of an indicator in a relationship here is the fact that she feels the need to lie at all. The idea that you have to lie to someone about this sort of thing says to me there's no mutual trust or respect in that relationship. That's what the issue is. Whether she's been with 4 or 15 people isn't an issue. What's the difference there? There are things you should ask a new partner. Ask about their STD status. Ask about if they have any kids or they're pregnant or anything like that. Ask about birth control. Ask about whether, past partners are present in their life now and that sort of thing. Those are things you can ask and that do make a difference. But the number of partners, I don't see why that makes a difference. Like, to me, if you had 2 different people and one of them was there and he'd only had 1 partner in the past, but now he had chlamydia and his ex-girlfriend, he was co-parenting 3 kids with them, and then you have another person who has had 30 partners in the past, but they're STD-free and child-free and they never see their past partners anymore, I know who I'm picking. The 1 versus 30 really doesn't come into it at all. It's all the other context around it, I think people place way too much importance on numbers and not the context and real life experiences. In this clip, Pearl just repeats the same thing over and over and over again. She has so few unique thoughts that she literally says like 3 things in this video and it's all the same. She's boring and unoriginal, and I just kind of want her to shut up. There's finally some slight sanity from these women who don't get enough chance to speak, where they talk about men caring about body count giving them the ick, which I agree with.
If you tell the guy your body count and he has an issue with it, does that give you the ick?
I feel like it does, because why do you care? Like,
Yeah.
Also, if you ask them, because I guarantee you, because I've talked to people about body counts before. At the age of 18 now, there's so many guys that is double what mine is. Like, I think
young.
I don't think it should matter because the people that care the most are the ones that trust they have so many more than you.
Okay, can I?
No. But of course, Pearl just has to disagree because she's not like the other girls, remember? She just has to tell us about this data, which she never actually provides a source for.
What do you think, Pearl?
No, I think that it matters. It absolutely matters. And every data you look at, the more guys you sleep with, the more likely you are to be divorced.
Really?
Yeah, and and there's a couple different studies, so the numbers vary a little bit, but there's one study where if you're a virgin when you get married, you have an 80% chance of a happy marriage in 10 years, 80%. And you know what it drops to after 5 guys, which most men pray for nowadays? 25% chance of being happily married after 10 years. So, and then people will, there's other studies that it's 50%, 40%, 30%, whatever it is, but the most happy tend to be the virgins.
She talks about data, these studies, these facts, but then never gives us a source for them. And it turns out she's pulling them out of her bum. This kind of data she's talking about misses so many points and has so many weaknesses. We have to remember that people who wait until marriage are also more likely to be religious and or be against divorce in general. So yes, they are more likely to stay in a marriage longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a happy or successful marriage. Length of marriage and success of marriage are not synonymous. And let's say a higher number of sexual partners does correlate with a higher chance of divorce. Why is this a bad thing? Why is divorce a bad thing? I've said so many times, a relationship ending does not mean it was a failed relationship or a waste of time or that that's some terrible bad thing. Sometimes things can be very successful and then end and there's nothing wrong with that. Also, just because there's a correlation, that doesn't mean there's a negative causal link. Pearl implies that the more sexual partners you have, the less happy you can be in a traditional marriage. But why is that a bad thing? Not everyone wants to be in a traditional marriage and that won't make people happy. Perhaps the more partners you have, the more self-aware you become, and the higher standards you have, or the less likely you are to settle for a partner who isn't compatible with you or who treats you badly. Surely in that case, it's a good thing to end those relationships sooner. Maybe in those cases, yeah, a higher number of sexual partners leads to a shorter marriage or relationship, but it leads to a higher quality relationship when you finally get in one, and it leads to a higher satisfaction in life. And of course, just because we notice a trend in something, that doesn't make it a rule. Even if there's a trend, that doesn't mean that'll be the case for everyone, and it doesn't mean that trends don't change over time. And the other things to consider are the fact that Pearl is only taking into account heterosexual marriage. She's not taking into account couples with other sexualities. She's not taking into account couples from cultures outside the USA. She's not looking at happy couples who never got married. She's not looking at polyamorous couples. She's not looking at so many different facets and other types of relationship and people out there. Also, unlike Pearl, I actually decided to look up some of these studies. Even the Institute for Family Studies, which is notoriously right-wing and a bit biased, proves Pearl wrong. It shows that the numbers she's quoting here are pulled completely out of her bum hole. One article from the Institute for Family Studies talks about how the researcher looked at 30 years worth of data from the General Social Survey in America and found that while there was some correlation between the number of sexual partners and the happiness of their marriage for women, it's not nearly as significant as Pearl was making out. In fact, the number of past sexual partners is way more likely to affect the happiness of men in marriage than women. Meanwhile, a 2016 paper for the Journal of Sex Research found that, and I quote, "In prior research, the expectation has generally been that less is more. In other words, that a higher number of past partners tend to harm an individual's attractiveness. However, this study actually found that up to around 4 to 6 previous partners, the more partners someone had, the more likely both men and women were to get into a short or long-term relationship with that person. That is, up to a certain point, the more partners you have increases your attractiveness, and then it does decline after that. But it doesn't mean it's a straight less is more approach." Another recent study, which is due to be published later this year in the Social Science Research Journal, was actually completed in September 2022 and actually found that, and again I quote, "The effect of multiple sex partners on marriage rates is seasonal for most Americans, as the association between non-marital sex partners and marriage rates is temporary. Recent sex partners predict lower odds of marriage, but not lifetime non-marital sex partners." This study goes on to say, "Our findings cast doubt on the controversial notion that more readily available sexual activity with numerous partners will reduce men's and women's desire or desirability and ultimately likelihood of marrying. Though the seasonal effect of having multiple sex partners may contribute to delayed marriage, declining rates of marriage cannot be broadly explained by access to cheap sex, especially in light of the fact that sex frequency and the number of sex partners is declining among young people. Our marriage also shows that the sexual activity of single women does not appear to make them undesirable as marriage partners. Although heterosexual women have historically been stigmatized for having casual sex, our analyses show that this does not manifest itself in long-term singleness. Women with multiple sex partners are just as likely to get married as virgins, if somewhat later. So we can clearly see from the actual data, sources in the description by the way, Pearl is oversimplifying, exaggerating, and generalizing when she really shouldn't be, because she has an agenda she wants to force out into the world and portray as fact when it's not. As for her claim that the most happy people tend to be virgins, there is literally no proof of this, but plenty which suggests otherwise. And of course, Pearl has to fall back on the typical, well, historically, men wanted to ensure paternity argument, which is stupid for a number of reasons.
Give me a virgin.
No, because they've got no experience. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's why I'm the teacher.
It might not be a virgin, but most guys would prefer 5 over 50.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I know we have to go to the extremes to prove the point, because historically men had to ensure men had to ensure paternity. So they had to know, am I passing on resources to a kid that's mine? Because historically we didn't have paternity tests, we didn't have DNA tests. So the only way they could decipher that is this woman pure? How does she act? How is she modest? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But going back to it, I really don't think that you can hide it you can only hide it for so long.
One, not everyone wants kids, so paternity doesn't matter to a lot of people. 2, if I slept with a man 10 years ago and get pregnant tomorrow, there's no chance he's going to be the father of that baby, is there? So number of historical sexual partners doesn't affect paternity, only number of sexual partners at conception. And 3, paternity tests do exist now, they're a thing, and quite easily accessible. And that's pretty much where this video ends. I'm very, very tired of Pearl, and so that is where I am going to end this video today as well. If there are more videos and content from Pearl that you would like me to respond to, please do let me know down in the comments. I feel like I haven't really scratched the surface with her at this point, because I have just looked at these very recent videos, but I still feel very concerned for her. I pity her angry, miserable, constantly online life. I'm concerned about the clearly awful, thoughtless, and self-obsessed people she spends her time with. I'm concerned for the people watching her because of this harmful content she puts out and promotes. I am shocked that someone so boring and lazy managed to get such a huge channel and following, but good on her for exploiting a harmful system, I guess. And honestly, I'm just concerned for her future. Clearly she's making money off this content now, but how long can that really last? And by making this kind of content, she's not really expanding any skills or learning anything that she can use in the long term. So where does she go from here when something happens and her audience of misogynists turn against her? I don't know. But honestly, mostly I'm just exhausted by having to watch just these handful of videos from her, so that's where I'm going to leave things today. Please let me know what you think of Pearl and other anti-feminist creators like her down in the comments section. If you're new here, please remember to subscribe. You can also go support my channel over on Patreon, where you can join our Discord server and chat away with us. You can see photos that I post over on there, mostly of my cute dog and stuff like that. You can, at the higher tiers, get exclusive stickers and prints sent out to you every 3 months. Or if you just want to check some stuff out for yourself, I do have my poetry book available over on Amazon. I have photography prints and art prints available over on my website, and you can find everything else down in the video description. And if you want to follow me on social media, I am most active over on Instagram. But yeah, that is pretty much be done for today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much. I am rambling quite a lot. I'm very, very tired at the moment. I actually tried to film this video yesterday and my camera messed up, and I ended up just like sat crying on a table for like half an hour, so that was fun. It was not fun. But yeah, I'm very tired at the minute. I've been working quite a lot and I'm just a little exhausted. But thank you so much for watching today, and hopefully I will see you all again very, very soon. Bye.